Write down what you love about yourself right now. All the great things about you right now, write them down. Hey guys, Vicky Lemons here and welcome to my channel. If you are new, welcome, and if you are returning, welcome back. I am so glad to have you here. This video is going to be a follow-up to my first video with my parenting tips. In my first video, I gave you 7, I believe it was, parenting tips, some things that I believe are really key parenting tools that I utilize in my parenting. So this one's a little bit different because we're going to talk about how I taught my children about sex, right? Intimacy. Number one, what I will say is that from a very early age, I've always taught my children about good touch and bad touch. This was a conversation that we had as early as they were able to even comprehend anything. But if you are new to my channel, I was abused as a child from the age of 9 to 12. Never had I heard about good touch, bad touch. Never was I talked to about if someone was to touch me inappropriately, what to do, anything like that. So I knew as a parent, when I became a parent, it was my responsibility for my children. This is what I do with my children, right? We do what we want to do in our own homes. And it was my responsibility as a parent to always make sure that they understood the difference between good touch and bad touch. And also, one of the things that I've always made it known is that just because it feels good doesn't mean it is good, right? So in this video, we're going to talk about how I talk to them about that hard conversation we don't really want to have, right? But we have to have. And it really doesn't even have to be a hard conversation. So what I did, number one, I always talk to them about good touch and bad touch. I didn't even allow my children to go to any type of school until I knew that they could communicate to me what good touch was, what bad touch was, what their private parts were labeled, who should touch them, who shouldn't touch them, how to speak up if someone did that wasn't supposed to, things like that. So, for instance, I'll give you a funny story. When my son was starting kindergarten, my husband was deployed at the time. We were a military family. And so it was my job to teach my son about going to the restroom while he's in school. Now me, I was a stay-at-home mom at the time, so I was very much willing to let him stay home another year if I felt he wasn't ready to speak up for himself. That's just the kind of mom I am. But what I did was I had a conversation with him over and over again. So my husband's in the military. I have to teach my son how to use a public restroom without me because he went into the ladies' room with me until he was almost 13 years old. And so anyway, that's another story. But my husband being in the military, they have urinalysis all the time. And in the urinalysis, there's a person that has to watch the soldier go to the bathroom and pee in the cup. So the person watching the soldier pee in the cup, the nickname for that role is the meat gazer, M-E-A-T, gazer. So you can figure out why. So I thought that's a perfect way to explain to my son exactly what we don't want to happen when we go into the bathroom. We don't want anyone to meat gaze. So that's what I did. That's how I explained it. I explained it like when daddy has to have a urinalysis, that means like a drug test, they have to check for stuff in his pee, they have him pee in a cup, and there's a person that watches the cup to make sure that he doesn't try and trick them and put something else in the cup. And that person watching is watching daddy's meat. meat. And this is how I started talking to him about that. So when you're in the restroom, no one should meat gaze at you. And I would have him practice this in the car with me. I would say, tell me, what would you do if someone was meat gazing? And he would say, stop meat gazing, in his little 5-year-old, 6-year-old voice. And I would say, who's gonna stop looking at you like that? Who's gonna stop looking by you saying it like that? Say it stronger, say it firm, show them you're not playing around. So he would say, stop meat gazing. And it was so funny, but it got the point across. And during this time, because my husband was gone deployed, we had moved to this particular town in the middle of the year, which was very common for military families. So my son and daughter, well, my son at the time, just my son. So my son started school in the middle of the year. So he had to have a student show him around the school. So his teacher assigned him a young man to show him where the restrooms were and things like that. So first day he goes to school, we get in the car, we always talk about their day. How was your day? Anything specific happened? What was the good part? What was the not so good part? So everything was great. He had a great time. Nothing happened. Second day, same thing. What happened? He says, well, something did happen. So as mom, I'm driving, but I'm bracing myself for whatever he's getting ready to tell me, right? And he says, this boy was meat gazing. I said, what? I said, and what did you do? He said, I told him to stop meat gazing. I said, and what did he say? He said, I'm not. And we don't even know if the little boy knew what he was talking about. But what it turns out is the little boy had to show him where the restroom was because he was his helper, and hold the door for him so that he could follow him back out to go back to class. But it was a very innocent situation. However, it made me proud as a mom, number one, that he was listening to what I was saying, and he wasn't afraid to use his voice. So whether or not that boy knew exactly what meat gazing was, he knew that whatever my son thought he was doing was inappropriate. So even if he would have stopped. He used his voice. So number one, in teaching my children about intimacy, I always have the talks with them that they need to have, and I always try and relate it to something that I can easily explain and break it down for their little mind. So at every phase, I didn't wait till my kids were 10 and 11 to explain the birds and the bees, because nowadays that's just too late. And you obviously have to gauge your children. I have two. They are very different in the way that they comprehend things, and they are very different on their levels of what they find to be entertaining via intimacy type stuff and not. Okay, and I have a boy and a girl, so it's very different. And my son is almost 16, my daughter is 12. So obviously a 16-year-old boy finds things very interesting, finds different things to be interesting versus a 12-year-old girl. So, but I use every opportunity to explain them both to them. So number one, I teach them about good touch and bad touch. And then the next thing I do is I use every situation as a learning experience. Your pets are a good way to explain. I've used my dogs a few times in why and how and things like that. And sometimes it is a little uncomfortable because I wasn't talked to this way, and my generation, I feel like we were kind of closed off when it came to us being told about the birds and the bees, right? But I'm not that way with my children. I heard something from Oprah years ago, and she said, she was talking to a therapist or someone for children, and the question was, when do you know what's too much? When they stop asking, the question. So keep giving the information until they stop asking. My son once, he asked me, where do babies come from? Did he come out of my belly? I said, no baby, you didn't come out of my belly. But some mommies do have their babies come out of their belly. It's called a C-section. And I explained to him how that works. So he got quiet, and then he said, well, how did I come out? I said, you came out of my vagina. And he got quiet, and he's probably about 5 now, 5 or 6. And it got quiet. I'm driving. And then he said, when it comes out, when I came out, did it stretch? Did it hurt? I said, it didn't hurt too much because they gave mommy some medicine, but it did stretch. And he got quiet, and then he said, did it go back into place? Does the stretching come back in? I said, well, if you're lucky, right? And he just stopped asking questions. He just stopped. He had enough for his mind. And I've just always been okay with giving them what they need educationally, feeding them the information, because I would rather them be overly informed than to be underinformed. So when we're watching TV, here's a great example of something to do. When we're watching TV, if a scene comes up that maybe they used a certain type of like innuendo, and I'm curious as to know if they know what that innuendo meant, I'll pause the TV and I'll say, do you know what they meant? And I'll explain. My daughter saw a gesture on TV and they were referencing fellatio. She asked, and she was probably about 9. And I explained to her what that is, and is it appropriate? Is it not appropriate? Always very open and willing to have the conversation. They both pretty much know everything about the birds and the bees. We don't call it the birds and the bees. I'm just doing it for algorithm's sake. But I definitely have the conversation, and I definitely am not scared of having the conversation or intimidated by the conversation. It's a conversation that just needs to be had. And nowadays, when I was growing up, it was just about male and female. Now I have to broaden my horizon and learn about other sub birds and bees cultures so that I can share those things with them as well. So number 1 is I teach them about good touch and bad touch. Number 2 is I use every opportunity as a learning experience. Number 3, I don't sugarcoat anything. I say it exactly as it is. And obviously things have to be age appropriate as far as what my 16-year-old son, how he needs to hear it or what he needs to hear is different from my 12-year-old daughter. But some things aren't. She's very intellectual, behavior-wise. She understands people, where he is more intellectual analytically. He's more book smart. So some things that he may not even get behavior-wise, she understands. So you have to know your children. So that's why I am very blunt. I don't do like nicknames for things. They know exactly what their parts are. They know exactly what this slang term means for this. Or if I say if they see a term on TV, they know what that means. And I think it's just something to keep them. I think sugarcoating it puts a play version on it when it's a serious topic. It's not something like, it's not really a play topic. It's a serious topic. You want to know what people are talking about when they're talking about the things that belong to you on your body. So I'm just very straightforward with my information. I don't like fluff it up. I shoot it straight to them, and they can know that they can shoot it straight back to me, whatever questions that they have. And last but not least, I tell them about their spirit. If it doesn't feel right in your spirit, then it's not right. And what I mean by that, if we're watching a show, what my son may deem as that's not a problem for me to watch, my daughter might be like, that is just too much, I don't want to see that. I teach them how to leave the room. Leave the room. any room, from now till you're an adult, any room that something is going on that makes your spirit feel uncomfortable, leave the room. It's too much for your spirit. That's how you gauge, that's how they are able to gauge what's okay to watch and what's not okay to watch. And if you can't watch it with me around, then you probably shouldn't be watching it. That's another thing. And obviously we are very flexible in what they watch. However, it is very guided. There is a too much, and we make sure that their innocence is protected age appropriately, if that makes sense, because there is a such thing as too much too soon, and I'm very aware of that. And so, number one, I teach them, and I have always taught them about good touch, bad touch. Number two, I use every opportunity as a learning experience. Number three, I'm straightforward. I'm a straight shooter with the information. I keep it age appropriate because I know my children. You have to know your children. But I'm a straight shooter. And number four, I teach them about their spirit. If it don't feel right, if you're watching it and it makes you feel uncomfortable, leave the room. Because we can't expect people in life, right, to stop doing whatever they're doing because it makes us uncomfortable. So we should be comfortable and get comfortable with saying, oh, I'm good here, this is not for me, and leaving, removing ourselves from the situation. So that's what I teach them to do. If it doesn't feel right in your spirit, leave the room. This is not my thing. Leave the room. So, as always, I hope this message has helped, guys. These are just some of the things that I use when I'm parenting, and it has helped me tremendously this far. And you will be surprised what your children will tell you the more open you are with them. So I thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe. God bless.